In no man's land, the Harlem Hellfighters fight for honor. The regiment nobody wanted. Camp Wadsworth, South Carolina, October 1917. Private Henry Johnson stood at attention in the blistering southern heat, sweat running down his face, trying not to react to the white officer screaming 3 inches from his nose. "You think you're soldiers? You think you can fight in this man's army? You're nothing but." Henry kept his eyes fixed straight ahead. He'd heard worse. Growing up in Albany, New York, working as a railroad porter, he'd heard every slur, every insult, every reason why a black man should know his place. But he'd enlisted anyway. Joined the 369th Infantry Regiment, the pride of Harlem, they called it, because he believed in something bigger than himself. The officer moved down the line to Corporal Needham Roberts, 20 years old, barely shaving, but with eyes that held steel. "What about you, boy? You ready to run when the bullets start flying?" Needham didn't flinch. "No, sir." "Ready to fight, sir." The officer's face turned purple. But before he could respond, a voice cut across the parade ground. "That's enough, Lieutenant." Colonel William Hayward strode across the field, his face grim. He was white, most of the officers were, but he had volunteered to lead this regiment when no one else would. He'd recruited these men from Harlem, from across New York, promising them a chance to prove themselves. Now, 6 months into their training, he was beginning to wonder if America would ever give them that chance. "Colonel, sir, I was just dismissed, Lieutenant." After the officer left, Hayward addressed the assembled regiment. Over 1,000 black men stood before him, men who had enlisted to fight for democracy abroad while being denied basic rights at home. "Gentlemen," Hayward began, his voice carrying across the silent ranks, "I won't lie to you. We are not wanted here. The Army doesn't want Negro combat troops. They want you loading supplies, digging latrines, building roads. They've rejected every request I've made to send you to France. They say you lack discipline, courage, intelligence, everything that makes a soldier." A murmur rippled through the ranks. "But I know different," Hayward continued. "I've trained with you. I've watched you master tactics that white units struggle with. I've seen your dedication, your precision, your pride. So we're going to keep training. We're going to be so good that they can't refuse us. And when we get to France, and we will get to France, we're going to show the world what the 369th Infantry can do." If this story of determination against impossible odds resonates with you, subscribe to our channel. We're committed to bringing untold stories of courage to light. That night, in the segregated barracks, even in the army, black soldiers were kept separate. Henry sat cleaning his rifle. Around him, men talked quietly. "They'll never send us," someone said. "We'll spend the whole war digging ditches for white boys to hide in." "Then we dig the best damn ditches they've ever seen," replied Sergeant Noble Sissel, a musician from Indianapolis who had joined up with his bandleader, Lieutenant James Reese Europe. "We do everything so well they can't ignore us." Henry thought about his wife back in Albany, about his son he'd barely met. He'd left them to fight for a country that didn't consider him fully human. In most southern states, he couldn't vote, couldn't eat in white restaurants, couldn't drink from white water fountains. He was expected to step off sidewalks when white people passed. Yet here he was, training to die for that country. He thought of Psalm 27 verse 14, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." Patience, faith, endurance. That's what his grandmother had taught him. That's what the black church preached every Sunday. Someday, justice would come. Someday, their sacrifices would matter. But waiting was the hardest battle of all. In December 1917, the impossible happened. The 369th received orders, they were shipping to France. But not as combat troops, as laborers. They would unload ships, build infrastructure, support the real soldiers. It was a humiliation. But it was also an opportunity. Because once they were in France, things could change. On the transport ship crossing the Atlantic, Henry stood on deck watching the grey water roll past. Next to him, Corporal Roberts shivered in the cold. "You scared?" Needham asked. Terrified, Henry admitted. "But not of dying. I'm scared of never getting the chance to fight. Of going through this whole war as a labor and coming home to people asking, 'What did you do?' And having to say, 'I dug latrines.'" "We'll get our chance," Needham said with a confidence Henry wished he felt. God didn't bring us this far for nothing. Neither man knew how prophetic those words would be. France, February 1918. The French were desperate. 3 years of brutal warfare had decimated their army. They needed reinforcements, any reinforcements. When American General John Pershing offered to loan them a regiment, the French accepted immediately. They didn't care that the regiment was black. They cared that it could fight. The 369th Infantry was transferred to French command in March 1918. For the first time, these black soldiers from Harlem were treated like real soldiers. The French issued them French helmets, French weapons, French rations. But more importantly, they issued them respect. Lieutenant James Reese Europe, the famous bandleader now leading a machine gun unit, watched in amazement as French officers saluted him. Not the mocking salutes American officers gave, real salutes. Recognition of rank, not race. "This is what it feels like," he said to Noble Cecil. "To be judged by what you do, not what you look like." But the white American command wasn't happy. General Pershing's headquarters issued secret information concerning black American troops, a document warning French officers not to treat black soldiers as equals, not to eat with them, not to shake their hands, not to praise them too highly. The French ignored it. They had bigger problems than American racism. The Germans were launching their spring offensive, a last desperate push to win the war before American reinforcements turned the tide. The French needed every rifle in the line. The 369th was sent to the front. Make sure to hit the like button if you're finding this story as powerful as we do. These men's courage deserves to be remembered. Henry Johnson found himself in a forward listening post on the night of May 14, 1918. With him was Needham Roberts. Their job, watch for German patrols and sound the alarm if an attack came. At 2 a.m., Henry heard wire cutters snipping through the barbed wire. A German raiding party, at least 20 men, was sneaking toward their position. He fired 3 shots into the air, the alarm signal, then opened fire into the darkness. Beside him, Needham did the same. The Germans charged. A grenade exploded, shredding Needham's arm and leg. He went down, screaming. Henry kept firing until his rifle jammed. Then he drew his pistol, firing until it emptied. The Germans were on top of them now. Henry saw them grabbing Needham, trying to drag him back to their lines as a prisoner. Something inside Henry snapped. Years of humiliation, of insults, of being told he was inferior, all of it transformed into pure rage. He grabbed the only weapon he had left, his bolo knife. What happened next became legend. Henry Johnson, 5'4" and barely 130 pounds, attacked over 20 German soldiers with a knife. He slashed, stabbed, fought with a ferocity that shocked even the battle-hardened Germans. He killed 4 men. Wounded over 20. Saved Needham from capture. By the time reinforcements arrived, Henry was standing among the bodies, covered in blood, some his, some the enemy's, still gripping his knife. He had 21 wounds. Needham had even more. But they were alive. And they had stopped the German raid. The French went wild. They awarded Henry the Croix de Guerre, France's highest military honor. Needham received it too. American newspapers called Henry Black Death. The 369th became known by a new name, the Harlem Hellfighters. But when American command heard the story, their reaction was different. They questioned it. Suggested it was exaggerated. Downplayed the achievement. Because Henry Johnson's heroism was a problem. It contradicted everything they'd said about black soldiers being cowards, being inferior. If one black porter from Albany could fight like a demon and save his comrade, what did that say about all the racist assumptions the army was built on? Colonel Hayward understood what was happening. He wrote in his journal, "My men are proving themselves the equal of any soldiers in this war. And America can't stand it." The 369th Infantry Regiment spent 191 consecutive days in combat, longer than any other American unit in World War I. No relief. No rotation. No rest. While white American units spent weeks in combat, then rotated to rear areas for recovery, the Hellfighters stayed on the line. Month after month. Battle after battle. They fought in the Champagne-Marne offensive. They held positions at Belleau Wood. They advanced through the Meuse-Argonne, the deadliest battle in American history. Private Horace Pippin, an artist before the war, sketched the trenches between bombardments. In his diary, he wrote, "We sleep with rats and wake with death. We eat mud and breathe gas. And still they ask us, are you brave enough? Are you good enough?" Every day we answer with blood. Drop a comment below sharing what you think about these men's extraordinary service. How does their story change your understanding of American history? The casualties mounted. Men died from bullets, shells, gas, disease, exhaustion. But they never broke. Never retreated. Never surrendered an inch of ground. The French command was amazed. American command was troubled. These black soldiers were becoming heroes in France, decorated, praised, celebrated. What would happen when they came home? Lieutenant James Reese Europe led his regiment's band in a different kind of warfare, cultural. Between battles, they played jazz, ragtime, blues, the music of Black America, in French villages. It was the first time most Europeans had heard jazz. They loved it. Europe understood the power of what he was doing. In a letter home, he wrote, "We're not just fighting with rifles. We're fighting with music, with culture, with proof that Black Americans are as sophisticated, as talented, as American as anyone. When this war ends, they can't pretend we don't exist anymore." Noble Sissel, playing beside him, added context, "We are walking a tightrope. Fight too well, and white America resents us. Fight poorly, and they say, we told you so. So we fight perfectly. And we let our music speak what words can't." In September 1918, the 369th led an assault on the German positions at Sechalde. It was suicidal, a frontal attack across open ground against entrenched machine guns. White units had tried and failed, taking massive casualties. The Hellfighters succeeded. They advanced through artillery fire, through poison gas, through bullets that cut men down like wheat before a scythe. They reached the German trenches and cleared them with bayonets and grenades. They captured the town. The French awarded the entire regiment the Croix de Guerre. Individual soldiers received dozens of additional medals. But when American headquarters filed their reports, the 369th's achievements were minimized. Attributed to French planning. Downplayed as adequate performance under French command. Colonel Hayward was furious. "My men have earned over 170 individual medals. They've captured German prisoners, artillery, supplies. They've broken German lines that white units couldn't crack. And the official record barely mentions them. It's not oversight, it's erasure." He thought of Micah 6 verse 8, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." Justice. That's all his men wanted. Not special treatment. Not revenge for decades of discrimination. Just recognition for what they'd actually done. But justice, Hayward was learning, was in short supply. The war ended on November 11, 1918. The Harlem Hellfighters had lost over 1,400 men killed or wounded. They had never lost a foot of ground. Never had a man captured. Never retreated. They expected to come home as heroes. They were only partly right. When the 369th marched up Fifth Avenue in New York City on February 17, 1919, over 1 million people lined the streets. It was the largest parade in the city's history. Black and white New Yorkers cheered, waved flags, threw flowers. For one shining moment, they were recognized as the heroes they were. Before we continue with what happened next, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. The story doesn't end here, and you won't want to miss the conclusion. Henry Johnson, still recovering from his wounds, rode in an open car. He waved to the crowds, smiled for the cameras, basked in a recognition he'd never imagined possible. But the celebration was brief. Within weeks, Henry found himself out of the army and unable to find work. His war wounds made physical labor difficult. His war stories made white employers uncomfortable. He struggled with what we'd now call PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, and inability to adjust to civilian life. He died in 1929, broken, forgotten, buried in an unmarked grave. It would be 86 years before he received the Medal of Honor he'd earned in 1918. The other Hellfighters faced similar treatment. They returned to an America that still denied them basic rights. They couldn't vote in much of the country. Couldn't get fair jobs. Couldn't live in white neighborhoods. And the army? The official histories barely mentioned them. Their decorations were filed away. Their achievements downplayed. When the military was integrated in 1948, the contributions of black units in World War I were largely forgotten. But something had changed. The Hellfighters knew what they'd done. More importantly, Black America knew. The Double V campaign of World War II, Victory Abroad, Victory at Home for Civil Rights, had its roots in the Hellfighters' example. They'd proven that Black Americans could fight, could lead, could excel. The question was no longer, can they, but why won't you let them? James Reese Europe, who survived the war, was stabbed to death by a mentally disturbed band member in 1919, just months after returning home. Over 150,000 people attended his funeral, one of the largest in Harlem's history. Noble Sissle went on to become a famous musician and civil rights activist. In the 1950s, he worked to ensure the Hellfighters' story was preserved. They tried to erase us from history, he said in an interview. But you can't erase truth. You can bury it, ignore it, downplay it, but eventually, it rises. Our men were the most decorated American unit in World War I. That's not opinion. That's fact. In 1996, nearly 80 years after the war, Henry Johnson finally received the Purple Heart. In 2001, he and Needham Roberts received the Distinguished Service Cross. In 2015, President Barack Obama awarded Johnson the Medal of Honor. At the ceremony, Obama said, "Henry Johnson shows that our diversity is a strength. It is only by enlisting every American, no matter their race, no matter their background, that we achieve the more perfect union that our founders promised." The Harlem Hellfighters, the 369th Infantry Regiment, served 191 days in combat. They received over 170 French medals. They never lost ground, never had a man captured, never retreated. They were more decorated than most white regiments, not because they were given special treatment, quite the opposite. They were more decorated because they had to be twice as good to be considered half as worthy. Every decoration was earned in the face of not just enemy fire, but systemic racism. Every battle was fought on two fronts, against Germans in France and against prejudice at home. Proverbs 21 verse 21 tells us, "Whoever pursues righteousness and love finds life, prosperity, and honor." The Hellfighters pursued righteousness, the right to serve, the right to fight, the right to be judged by their character and courage rather than their skin color. And eventually, decades late and at great cost, they found honor. But the lesson of the Harlem Hellfighters isn't just about the past. It's about the present. It's about the ongoing struggle to recognize excellence wherever it exists. To give credit where it's due. To judge people by their actions, not their appearance. These men proved themselves in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. They fought with courage that earned the respect of French soldiers, the fear of German enemies, and the uncomfortable silence of American commanders who'd claimed such courage was impossible. Their legacy lives on in every black soldier who serves today. In every person who fights for recognition in a system designed to overlook them. In every individual who demands to be judged by their merit, not their melanin. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, paraphrasing an older truth, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. The Harlem Hellfighters bent that arc. Not by themselves. Not completely. But they bent it. They proved that courage has no color. That heroism transcends race. That when given an equal chance, black Americans would not just meet the standard, they'd exceed it. Henry Johnson, dying alone and broke in 1929, never saw the Medal of Honor. But he saw something perhaps more valuable. He saw himself as a hero. He knew what he'd done. He knew his worth. In a letter to his wife from France, he wrote, "I may die here, but I'll die knowing I gave everything. I proved what I always knew, that I'm as much a man as any other. They can deny me a medal, deny me a job, deny me a vote. But they can't deny what I did in that trench. That's mine forever." And so it is. The story of the Harlem Hellfighters is American history. It's uncomfortable history. It reveals the gap between American ideals and American reality. But it also reveals something beautiful, that people will fight for those ideals even when those ideals don't yet include them. They fought for democracy before they had it. They fought for freedom before they possessed it. They fought for a country that didn't always fight for them. And in doing so, they moved that country closer to its founding promise, that all men are created equal. The 369th Infantry Regiment, the Harlem Hellfighters, were more decorated than white regiments because they were better. Not inherently, not racially, but practically. They had to be. Anything less than excellence would have been used as proof of inferiority. So they achieved excellence. Under impossible conditions. Against impossible odds. And eventually, long after most of them were dead, they received impossible recognition. Their story is our story. Their fight is our fight. Their courage should be our inspiration. Because if they could fight for an America that didn't yet exist, an America that lived up to its promises, then we can too. That's the legacy of the Harlem Hellfighters. Not just that they fought well, but that they fought for all of us. The 369th Infantry Regiment, Harlem Hellfighters, it was a real unit that served with distinction in World War I. The details of Henry Johnson's heroic action on May 14, 1918, are historically accurate. The regiment did serve 191 days in combat, the longest of any American unit, and received extensive French decorations while being largely ignored by American command. The systemic racism they faced, both in the army and upon returning home, is well documented. Henry Johnson did die in poverty in 1929 and wasn't awarded the Medal of Honor until 2015. The story represents both the incredible courage of these soldiers and the shameful treatment they received from the nation they served. Their legacy continues to inspire and challenge America to live up to its ideals of equality and justice for all.